So moving on to the next scenario. So this is, again, I'm making this name up. So it's a founder. His name is Karan.
Mhm.
And so Karan is, he's now couple of years into building a startup in India, has actually gained fair amount of traction. So maybe his startup is doing 100K to a million ARR. There is he's raised a seed round, kind of is has sort of good validation. But of course the holy grail is the US, and even his early investors are like, look, go after the US market and go and take the product there. So he kind of lands here and starts having conversations and realizes that, hey, this is a totally different market. I mean, something that you mentioned earlier as well. And that, so more importantly, the product has just gone down a different track, right? So he has used up a lot of the runway. How does sort of Karan go about a kind of managing the situation, managing expectations of all stakeholders as well, right? And really make progress?
No, this is such a pertinent question. I think a lot of us started off in the US because that's all we had access to. In India, sorry, right? That's all we had access to. Um, Again, I spoke about PMF per market, right? You have to understand, let's assume you have I'm giving you the best case scenario, which is product market fit in India. That's not the same as revenue in India, right? 2 million ARR in India means you could have 100 customers, right? 50 customers, and yet no PMF. So, we should not confuse the two. Revenue is a great proxy for PMF. It's not a substitute for it, right? And why am I telling you this? The reason I'm telling you this is, let me give you the most flattering end of that scenario, which is you have product market fit. You have customers, raving customers, you have product market fit, happy, right? If not, you'll see as I describe what happens next, it's much worse than that. What happens when you have a lot of good customers? Your best minds, you, your co-founder, your engineering lead, your product lead, your best customer success folks, your best product specialists, right? Solution engineers. Where are they focused? Where are they based? They're based in India, working IST, right? Focused on Indian customers, right? Working on the India time zone. You've got your entire org to wrap itself around the customer set that you're solving, right? What happens when you move to the US? You move to the US, right? Then you ask your core team, listen, guys, let's start doing some calls in the evening, my evening, your morning, your evening, my morning, right? And then so you got these 2 or 3 hours a day where you're overlapping, right? 2, 4 hours a day, you're overlapping. But the reality is you don't have an org structure built to support your US customers, right? A global clientele. So now you get your first customer. Then you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to get all of these people and I'm going to get them to work US times. And now you're bending your company out of shape. You already created a structure for success, 2 million of ARR, right? And you're not trying to change. The reason I start with this as opposed to many of the other things is you got to realize when you get PMF in a market or you get scale in a market, your team, company, employees, orientation, time, how you where you put your chips, all of that align towards that, which means the lack of runway is the least of your problems, or rather it is. But even if you have runway, you have to almost metamorphose as a company into something else to do US go to market, right? But now let's get beyond that. Okay, let's assume everyone miraculously starts working in the night, and the fact that your India customers will now no longer get the platinum service they used to get. Let's assume those are surmountable problems, okay? And you've done it. What is the other problem you face? You realize um, that everything about your go-to-market, your messaging, your this, your that, is actually tuned to that market. Your sales method and process is tuned around that market. Your language, your case studies, transference is very low. You may have a fabulous enterprise in a different geography. And I'm just making, forget India or the US. India is probably the fastest growing large economy on the planet. So we shouldn't undermine where that's at. But let's say you have a customer in Thailand who's the number one something in Thailand. There is no brand recollection or connection to that in the US, which means your referenceability is low. All the things you get to drive conviction as a 2 million ARR company, many of the weapons in your toolkit cannot be used here, right? Which means you need to now act like a zero revenue company in some senses, right? You can say we have this much revenue in Asia, there's credit for that. So imagine being a 2 million ARR company with 100 employees needing to act like a zero ARR company that should ideally have 20 employees, right? Now, no more. That transition often doesn't happen. So you try to take what worked in India and try to make it work here, and it often never works. You can ask companies that have gone to 2, 5, 10 million ARR in India and then, or Asia or Middle East, Southeast Asia, you'll realize that it's very hard to make the transition to the US because you often start with half measures. Founder moves, or you even worse, like founder moving is great. You hire a VP of sales from, it's a remote hire, and then person, and we'll talk about that a little later. But the point is now you're outsourcing your destiny in the most important enterprise market on the planet to a third party, right? And then you take a little bit of your marketing muscle and say, I'm going to enable this person with X, or say, I'm going to allocate $500,000 to this market. In the scenario you mentioned, runway is running out, which means, oh my God, I'm going to move, but the founder has 6 months runway to make it work or come back, right? These are all pressures you put on yourself that are counterproductive to the building of a great business, right? Simple fact, I'll say something that many founders will disagree on, which is you're getting a customer willing to sign, but you realize that that's not what you really do. Would you take it? Or would you say, no, I'm trying to transform my PMFs. I solve for X problem. I'll actually stay true to that course and not take on this customer, right? Will you take that call when revenue is in the line? Maybe not, right? Now, we know founders who at 5 million ARR discovered that what they really are solving for is X, which means they're willing to give up on the trail of revenue and move to that new business. But that's a big change. I'm talking about something more subtle, which is you're building for X, someone comes with a slightly adjacent requirement, right? It's coming in the way of predictability, but this customer needs it, but they're going to give you 200K, 250K, right? First deal in a big market. You've told your board, you've been here for 5 months, you want to show some success. The reality is 9 out of 10 of us, maybe I myself would take it. But what have you just done? You just committed yourself to a services offshoot to your product business, right? And even if you slam dunk that use case, you're not sure if that's replicable. You're not sure if there's a large enough market for it. You're not sure if it's a custom requirement or larger need of the market, right? You've just cannibalized your own business, right? Or rather, put it on a little fork because you wanted revenue. So that's the kind of pressure that I really worry about that founders face. I'm a huge believer in go slow before you go fast. I know enough founders who've taken money but are going slow, really searching for product market fit before they, pedal to the metal, so to speak. And that's a concept I genuinely believe in. So when you're trying to change the way your company is oriented, transfer your product market fit, go from being a 2 million 100 employee company to a zero revenue, 20 employee company. When you've got a product market fit and a belief in what works and you try to take it to a new market, so much changes that this is a scenario I would ideally, if I were involved in the company in seed stage, I would ask them to avoid. The best solution for this is to prevent this from happening, right? I generally feel that at 2 million ARR, you don't have the muscle to be a multi-geography enterprise sales company. I just feel I may be wrong, and maybe founders may put their hand up and say, I could do it. I would say you're not. You have to focus on a primary market. If all things being constant, if being a horizontal product, not having some other issues, if US is the market you want to go after, I'd say you should start in the US, spend the hard miles figuring out what the problems of this market are. So my solve for this is to turn back time and prevent this from happening because it's a real hard problem to get your way out of.